thanks for inviting me here today. I'm going to do just a very quick introduction for sort of some of the rationale for the exhibition. So I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. So the exhibition is called Illuminating a Hidden Narrative, Exploring How Youth with Disabilities Navigate Sexuality in Healthcare Settings. And just as a sort of a way of intro, I want to say about this, sexuality is considered by the World Health Organization as a central component to human nature. And sexuality includes how people view themselves and others, feelings about their body, respecting diversity, consent, developing healthy relationships, including friendships. So when I say, we can all be talking about sexuality when kids are very, very young, people are often a bit shocked, but you can probably see by that description that we can be talking about, what does a good friend feel like? What feels good? How can you be a good friend? Consent and things like that. So I fully believe we can start teaching these building blocks when our kids are young, and we often don't know when kids have a disability. So people often conflate sexual activity or sexual health, with sexuality. And sexual health, we think of as sort of protection from unwanted pregnancies, sexually transmitted, disease, very biomedical. Whereas sexuality is a much more holistic kind of social construct. And as I just said, it looks at sort of sex, gender identities, how people express their sex and gender, or their gender identities, intimacy, social relations. And it's great that a lot of sexual health organizations now are expanding their remit into this idea, into this kind of realm, and introducing the ideas of sort of, relationship groups and things like that. And while some sexual health practitioners are kind of thinking about this, we also know that they often don't feel very confident or don't know how to talk about this in regards to disability. So when it comes to youth with disabilities, very biomedical approaches are typically used, if at all, because we know a lot of youth don't have any kind of any instruction or discussion on these topics. So usually when you look at disabilities, often it's around risk reduction, like abuse prevention, behavioral management, to stop them doing inappropriate sexual behaviors, and so on. And this is largely because people with disabilities are considered naive, vulnerable, and in need of protection. And as such, disabled people are often infantilized, sexualized, and marginalized due to having bodies and minds that society deems as undesirable and also in need of protection. So what this approach ignores, however, is narratives of pleasure, of choice and rights, the rights of all people to make choices over their intimate lives. Youth with disabilities have the right to make private decisions about their body, emotions, and relationships, the right to access appropriate information and services, and the right to make choices about friendships and family life. And we know from our work in the Profile Lab that services and resources are very scattered and very difficult to access. And also that stigma and lack of understanding often impede the rights that we just talked about. And for many healthcare professionals and parents, it may not necessarily be due to the lack of sort of intention, but just are not sure how to approach it. And we heard a bit about that earlier with Revi Bonda's quick hit. So to facilitate discussions about this topic, we had some SHIRK funding to hold a connection day where we brought lots of different stakeholders together. In fact, we had 59 attendees, trainees, healthcare professionals, parents, caregivers, disabled young adults, researchers, and other professionals. And we really wanted to facilitate this discussion and to find out what they wanted to do or what they thought we should be doing research on, and also where we could kind of start making resources. So that's sort of the background to how Illuminating came about. So it was intended to be one part of the Connection Day, and it was going to be shown live in the hospital. And we got COVID hit, so we're actually going to be showing it soon in the newly renovated BRI space from November 29th. But the aim of Illuminating was to reduce stigma surrounding sexuality for youth with disabilities, and kind of make it more a part of the conversation in healthcare settings. And we really wanted to showcase young people's experiences and perspectives in the day, and then also through the exhibition, as well as sort of generating kind of different people to think, like researchers and parents and anyone who actually comes across this gallery. So it's currently online, but as I say, we are going to be showing it very soon in the new space. So I just thought it might be useful to kind of say how we did it. So we had young adults between 18 and 25 who self-identified as having a disability. We had very long informed consent discussions with them about kind of what they were doing, why, how it was going to be shown, who they could or what they could take photos of, very broad guidelines. It wasn't specific or very prescriptive. And we followed all ethical guidelines for conducting art-informed research. Even though this wasn't actually research, we wanted to make sure we were following all of the guidelines. And the young people themselves created ground rules for kind of ensuring a safe space. So the process was that the young adults met up as a group. They went away and took photos that represented their experiences navigating sexuality. They came back together, identified the most impactful image they wanted to show. And then they also selected an object to be projected onto their image. And a very talented artist, Joseph Canisaro, actually created these really interesting multimodal art pieces incorporating their image and the object they selected. And these are a couple that you've just seen here. So we would really encourage you to go and see the gallery, whether it's online or actually when the BRI sort of officially opens. And when you do, we'd love you just to reflect on kind of what have your experiences been navigating your sexuality within healthcare settings? Was this part of you actually acknowledged? Did you feel heard? Did anyone treat it as important? And so maybe think about that when you go to see these beautiful images, which actually all have descriptions on them from the artists about what sort of drove the image you see. So just want to acknowledge our funding and all the people that were involved, including Fiona Muller, who really was instrumental in kind of creating this art piece, as well as Stephanie and Madison, who worked so hard with the young people to develop these beautiful images, and the rest of the art working group. So I'm going to try and share the video.
Okay, now we can see it. Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, let's give this a go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wes. I am a male-presenting person with pale skin and sandy blonde curly hair. I'm wearing a red cardigan. I'm a 21-year-old multidisciplinary artist, storyteller, and a former client of the hospital. I'm so happy and honored to introduce the exhibition to you today. It's a dream come true for me, to bring light to the important conversation that needs to be had regarding the intersections of disability, race, gender, and sexuality. Exploring and acknowledging my sexuality and gender identity as a youth and adult has always been a challenging endeavor. In my experience, having a disability often supplants gender and sexuality in the eyes of contemporary society. This means that we're often seen as beings that cannot inhabit sexuality or sensuality or do not meet the rigid standards of the gender binary. Growing up, the distinct lack of knowledge and discussions on the intersections mentioned above left an incredibly scary and difficult void to fill. Coupling this with the fact that much of modern Western society has such a wide range of perceptions on disability as it relates to gender and sexuality, from everything from really personal questions to active ableist hate and vitriol made it even harder to navigate. The experience of creating art and telling my story as a white disabled individual exploring a non-binary identity was incredibly freeing, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have done so. Being able to comfortably explore my identities has taken mountains of work by myself and those close to me to break through this cloudy and difficult part of my world. I want this exhibition to help bring light to these issues, to create more space for conversations like this to be had around sexuality, gender, disability, and all the varying intersections that people move through the world with. I want this exhibition to be the one I did not have growing up. I want it to serve as a point of clarity for those navigating similar spaces such as myself. To pass on the knowledge that disabled sexuality and gender identity is real and valid and absolutely magical. Lastly, before I let you into the lovely exhibition below by clicking on the link, I'd like you to consider something. My art and my introduction, and thus my perspective, only comes from my lived experience and my intersections. As you drink in the stories on display today, I would love you to consider how my experience as a white disabled person is vastly different and vastly more privileged than a disabled person of color, and how that might impact the stories that are being shaped today. Thank you so much for listening to me, everybody. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the exhibition.
So Wesley introduced it way better than I could, and you can see what a passionate, how passionate he feels about this topic. So I'm going to leave it there because I can't top anything Wes has said, but please open to questions and also okay, yeah, so we can put the link to the online version in the chat just momentarily, but do come into the BRI space from the 29th of November, where you will see it all in person.